South Africa and Nigeria, the two largest economies in Africa, have vowed to strengthen their strategic partnership to drive the continent's transformation. During the 11th session of the Binational Commission in Cape Town, Presidents Cyril Ramaphosa and Bola Tinubu highlighted key areas for collaboration, from economic integration and youth development to tackling illegal mining and global governance reforms. Our State House correspondent Adesua here has been tracking the meeting and now reports.
President Bola Tinubu arrives Cape Town after a 3-day state visit to France. He is greeted by government officials of South Africa and Nigeria's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. At the Tyne Heights, he is welcomed by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, and then to the business of the day, the start of the 11th Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission. This year's session carries historic weight as the two countries mark 30 years of diplomatic ties, first established in February 1994.
We affirm once again our close bonds of friendship as well as solidarity, a friendship that has existed between our two countries for a very long time.
Nigerians from all walks of life are mobilized in unison. I'm very happy to share with you the joy of freedom and democracy.
In their opening remarks, Presidents Ramaphosa and Tinubu stressed the importance of deepening economic cooperation and addressing Africa's shared challenges. Ramaphosa highlighted measures to enhance bilateral trade, including simplified visa processes for Nigerian business people.
We look forward to seeing more Nigerian companies investing in South Africa. In fact, we want to see Nigerian products on the shelves of South African shops. Our efforts to create a favorable environment include our simplified visa process for Nigerian business people to travel to South Africa. Qualifying Nigerian business people can be granted a 5-year multiple entry visa. In addition, tourists from Nigeria are now able to apply for a visa without even submitting a passport.
In response, President Tinubu called for both nations to act as leaders in Africa's transformation. He stresses the importance of overcoming obstacles in their bilateral relations, describing them as irritants that hindered progress. Tinubu also reiterated Nigeria's desire to join South Africa in the G20 and proposed joint action against illegal mining.
We can identify the gaps and challenges, including persistent irritation in relations, and deal with them appropriately. To me, this is the real essence of BNC. Together, we can act as engines of economic integration, development in our perspective, sub-regions, as well as on the continent.
Both leaders emphasized the importance of youth in Africa's future. Ramaphosa linked youth development to South Africa's G20 agenda, while Tinubu highlights Nigeria's inclusive governance approach.
These young people represent the future. They are the demography that must be tended, invested in, and have their skill and potential harvested for development and the goals of the continent.
The session also reflected on historical ties.
As we mark 30 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between Nigeria and South Africa, we see a bright future for our relationship. Our strong bonds of friendship provide a firm foundation for our two countries for more meaningful economic cooperation.
I have accorded due to recognition to our shared history of collaboration and cooperation. We must ensure that the spirit of the collaboration and cooperation between our two leading countries in Africa will intensify and deepen under our leadership of our respective nations.
As the summit concluded, both leaders urged the implementation of over 30 memoranda of understanding signed over the past 25 years, calling for concrete action to transform agreements into tangible results.
The BNC has really come of age. But I must, however, sound a note of caution here. Let us not count on successes by number of MOUs and agreements signed. They will be mere papers until we implement them in spirit and in letter.
Adesua Omorwan, Arise News.
Nigeria and South Africa have agreed to finalize a 5-year memorandum of understanding, and very shortly we'll just talk about this story, Rufai, a few things that have come up, but great one there with regards to the conversation between two of Africa's greatest nations, Nigeria and South Africa. Your take on this story?
I mean, so this Binational Commission pretty much started in 1999, and what have we had? We've had a lot of, conversations, MOUs, joint agreements about various spheres of the economy, across healthcare, across technology, across development. We go there every year to sign these things, but it's always on the short end for Nigeria. That's my sad thing about it. If my memory serves me right, look at what happened, I think, was it 2019 or 2020, as regards those xenophobic attacks. And that period, too, we talked about the Binational Commission liaising with South Africa. It's not just worked. So apart from all these agreements, and apart from the fact that Nigeria is now soliciting South Africa's help to now become a permanent member of BRICS, which we should also look at strongly, because look at the reaction by the Americans. Obviously, the Americans are not enjoying that, but I don't think the Americans alone should be able to dictate the trajectory of the world. Nations too should be able to stand on their own, because all of this America is doing was the after effect of the Second World War, because they were predominantly the victors, so they were able to dominate everything in the order of the world. And for further reading, you can read on, the order of the world and how the world has evolved under by Henry Kissinger. But the truth has to be said. Nigeria has always fallen short on all of this. And even this new visa incentive that they are talking about, the practicality of it is what I would like to see. Dr. Abati can tell you his very copious stories of how South Africa disappointed him. I mean, not be so, Dr. Abati. The stories are there. And not only Dr. Abati, a lot of people. So you say Nigeria will not have to submit their passport, they will get 5 years and all of that.
For business.
And all of that. It's the process, the effectiveness. In fact, we've had the South African High Commissioner here, the South African ambassador here to talk about the visa challenges. Then secondly, with all of these agreements we all normally sign, you have a lot of South African businesses and their franchisees running here. Because most of the so-called big South African businesses you see, it's a franchise that is running here. Yeah. But how many Nigerian businesses are making that same dent in South Africa? It's a very hostile business environment. We all know what happened when Nigerian business tried to make incursions into South Africa. We all know how they are treated by the trade union in South Africa. We all know how the pervading economy affects them in South Africa. They don't create an enabling environment for our businesses here. Nigerian businesses have gone to try as much as possible to start up things in South Africa, and they've lost a lot of resource. So all these agreements we are having across digital, health, and all of that, is it beneficial to both? Yes, South Africa can say you have over 60% or 64% of the trade between Nigeria and between South Africa and West Africa. Over 64% of the trade is with Nigeria. But if you are to look at those trade volumes, I can assure you that it's skewed more to the South Africans. And that's where this imbalance needs to be fixed. This is the same Nigeria that's one of the first countries, to adopt the United Nations Framework Report on the Apartheid and things that happened in South Africa then. This is the same Nigeria that stood in the gap for South Africa and ensured we did our own part towards the independence of that country, South Africa. But what have we gotten in the end? So I think in going forward, all these binational commissions and all of that, we should now start thinking of how it can favor Nigeria more. Because in all of this, it doesn't favor Nigeria. And that's why I was still taken aback with what happened in France. Till today, they said we signed an MOU as regards mining. What is the numbers involved? Is France coming here to say they want to build a lithium refinery or some solid mineral refinery? We've not seen anything. They just say we signed an MOU, a broad MOU. An MOU is nothing. So please, in all of this agreement, Nigeria first, like Donald Trump will always say.
Nigeria first. Dr. Bati.
Okay, the Nigeria-South Africa Bilateral Cooperation Council has been there. These same meetings have been held in the past by every president. At every meeting, the memoranda of understanding, in various aspects of, relationships between both countries are signed. I've made a point that the problem is always the follow-up, the follow-through. There's nothing in the basket that President Tinubu is coming back with that is new. Why did it happen in the past and nothing was done to follow through? Would there be follow-through and actionable plans, targets this time around? That is the question. Aside of that, if you look at some of the things they talked about, visa, to allow Nigerians to come, you know that, of course, that has to be reciprocal. But the South African mission in Nigeria is very notorious with the way it treats Nigerians applying for visas. And it's not necessarily a reciprocal thing. I'm sure there are so many Nigerians running up and down Nigeria. But when it comes to the turn of Nigerians to get visas to South Africa, it's always a problem. They will even collect your money and they will not give you visa. They will even collect your money. They will not give you appointment. Now that South African arrogance is the first thing that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria has to address at a reciprocal level. Despite this agreement that there will be improvement in terms of visa relations, because the people who feel it are the Nigerian people. However, whatever is done at the binational commission, that's government to government. What is more important that the Nigerian government needs to worry about is to people relations. How do they treat our people who are in South Africa? How do we treat their people who are in Nigeria? I've never heard of any Nigerian victimizing or being xenophobic towards any South African. But the standard argument that South African businesses here will give you is that, it's a Nigerian business. It's not MTN South Africa, it's MTN Nigeria. That's what they will say, Nigerians own the business. But we know, of course, that the DNA is in South Africa. How many businesses are in South Africa that their DNAs can be traced to Nigeria? And I mean, by that, I don't mean retail business. I mean big business, serious business. So balance of trade is very important. And it was one of the issues that came up in that South Africa Nigeria Binational Commission. We need to look at the balance of trade. Who is getting more? Who is getting what? Another issue that came up, of course, is the trade-off about South Africa asking Nigeria to support its candidate for the presidency of the African Development Bank after the completion of the tenure of Akinwumi Adedeji. And Nigeria asking for South Africa to support Ambassador Bankole Adeoye's candidacy for commissionership in charge of political affairs at the African Union, which is a position that Nigeria has held before. I can recall like two prominent Nigerians who have been in that position and who represented us well. So in diplomacy, it's quid pro quo. You rub my back, I rub your back. But this should not be only about positions at international fora. It should also be about how they treat us and how we too treat them. Both countries agreed to pursue Agenda 2063 under the rubric of the African Union. They both agreed to support the Western Sahara, now Western Sahara Polisario Morocco issues and all that. Well, I don't want to go into that. I don't want to bore you with the international politics in that regard. But the issue also is that there are meeting points. But the parts that we should be concerned about is, again, this early warning mechanism, one of the things that both parties discuss, about reprisal attacks, about violence. That memorandum on that was signed 5 years ago. Why is it now, 5 years later, that we are now just coming up with a deadline of March 2025, which speaks specifically to the tardiness, to the indolence that we have seen in the management of our foreign affairs process. But on the whole, in terms of their optics, it's good to see President Ramaphosa and President Tinubu sitting in the same room. It's unfortunate that both countries, the citizens, don't seem to be at the same level in terms of the amity that President Tinubu is working towards. I think the more critical thing, South Africa being a favorite destination for Nigerians, either in terms of business, retail end of it mostly, and also for medical tourism. There are many Nigerian doctors in South Africa. There are many Nigerian academics in South Africa. Okay, maybe that will translate into, the balance, into relationship. And that South Africans will make the effort to remember that Nigeria was one leading country that invested in this moment in which South Africa has found itself. The support that Nigeria gave to the apartheid struggle, the support that Nigerian presidents of old gave to the apartheid struggle. While I was in school, these South Africans used to enjoy scholarship in Nigeria. They will get drunk and fall from a fourth floor in our hostel. When I got to the University of Ibadan, it was the same thing. They were more interested in the Nigerian girls, creating unnecessary competition on campus. And people used to say, why are all these people from South Africa, Lesotho, always using Nigerian money to take all our girls? But today, the same Nigerian boys of those days are now seeing the same South Africans saying, what are Nigerians doing in our country? This is the irony. But I hope that the Tinubu administration will concentrate and try to sort out the knotty points in our relationship.
Absolutely. All right. So Nigeria and South Africa, I started off by saying that they're two of the most powerful nations on the African continent. And if we are to achieve shared prosperity on the continent, these two countries will play or must play a very critical and major role. And that's why it's important for a cordial diplomatic relationship between both nations. Of course, we've seen Nigeria has enjoyed diplomatic relationships with South Africa probably since their independence or even prior, as we've often talked about the role that Nigeria played in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. However, beyond that is the workings of these, so on the surface of things, good relationship, but in the detail is where we have issues, the knotty issues. And that's what this meeting, this commission, this Nigeria-South Africa National Commission, the 11th session of it, hoped to address. One of the things that came out very strongly and which would be of interest to many Nigerians, of course, is the visa process, which we talked about. What they've now said is that they'll make it make it easier for Nigerians who want to do business in South Africa to move without having your passport locked or being held in the embassy for a long time. So you can submit your application and perhaps when the visa is ready, you get your passport submitted and get it stamped. But what a number of people have also talked about is that when it comes to trade, and by the way, Nigeria and South Africa have both ratified the African Continental Free Trade Area. When it comes to trade in terms of movement of goods and services, it is critical for us to be able to have seamless movement across continents. We've talked across countries. We've talked about this a number of times, and we've shared how it is easier to travel from Europe or America to an African country in many instances than it is to travel across countries. So that's one area that must be addressed, and it's not just by signing MOUs. It's also putting the work in and ensuring that the process is actually followed through. Beyond that also, of course, is the opportunity to maximize business partnerships between both countries. In terms of that, I don't think that we've been able to see a detailed plan for both countries to work better together in terms of trade. Nigeria is usually comes there with the best foot forward. With 200 million population to South Africa's 60.41 million population, there's a big market there for South Africa to leverage, which they have done, if you're in honesty. They've done so consistently. But in terms of reciprocity, Nigeria has not been fully able to take advantage of this relationship to be able to do business freely in South Africa. So I hope these were some of the conversations that were on the table between both presidents. It's great optics to see the two leaders come together, and perhaps that will trickle down to the citizens. But there are more things that we might want to explore. On the formal side of things, the trade deals, the MOUs, but even the more, let me use the words of the military, non-kinetic efforts to ensure that citizens in both countries are able to work together. If it's not our music we're fighting about, it is the culture, it is the food, any little thing can trigger the rivalry that exists between South Africa and Nigeria. And it's almost deliberate to ensure that these two powerful nations don't see eye to eye in order to stall the growth and progress of the African continent. And so I'm hoping that this is just the beginning of the work, a lot of work that needs to be done. If Africa must prosper, Nigeria and South Africa have a huge role to play. Take a cue from the European nations, look at how they work together. We haven't still been able to maximize the AU as a unifying factor to bring countries on the African continent together, to not just be friendly with each other, but to do business with one another for the shared prosperity of Africa. So for me, this meeting is perhaps even more important than a lot of the foreign trips that the president has had in recent times. Let us talk to ourselves within the continent. Let us work together and make Africa as a continent stronger and able to compete favorably with continents around the world.